Hello everybody, this is Brian from Breaking Down Security. This is episode 2, or our continuing discussion with Aaron Guzman about the OWASP IoT Top 10, which was published at the end of last year. The first episode was so enthralling and a bit on the long side, so we decided to split it up into 2 different podcasts. So if you are now listening for the first time, you may want to go back and download part 1, which we put out last week. So this episode, we discuss the physical tampering of embedded devices. We also discuss some privacy concerns with the data that IoT devices might be collecting. And we also discuss volunteering options with OWASP if you're interested in helping to, like them or, disagree with what OWASP is doing. They are the movers and shakers of the industry. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I mentioned, if I didn't mention it in this one or in the previous one, was OWASP IoT Top 10 came out. This is going to be the new standard that everybody's going to be looking at with regards to IoT. Just like with the OWASP Top 10. Like it or hate it, people still compare web vulnerabilities according to OWASP Top 10. So, excuse me. All right, so before we go, got a couple announcements. Christian Amaya hit me up on our Slack, which is the Brakesec Slack, and he said he's part of the organization for the first B-Sides event happening in Barcelona, Spain. Oh, that's awesome. I've been to Barcelona. It is a fantastic place. They have a CFP open. If you are interested in going and possibly speaking at B-Sides Barca, the CFP closes on 10 February, so if you're interested in going and visiting Barcelona in February, and you really should because it is a fantastic city to be stuck in or just to go visit. So he says, and to clarify, the conference will be in English. Let me know if you need more info. So I told him I would definitely let people know on this episode. So CFP is open. I don't have the actual website, but I'm sure if you go search for B-Sides Barca, you'll find it quite easily. And so, before one other thing, next week we're going to be discussing getting security as far left as possible with regards to getting security implemented in DevOps in your DevOps environment. So we're going to be talking to Liz Rice. It's one of our daytime shows that we do. So everybody was at work at their various workplaces. Ms. Berlin was at ShmooCon, to give you an idea of when we recorded it. So definitely take a listen if you're in a DevOps shop. She gives us a very interesting perspective on that. So B-Sides Barcelona, April 12th, 2019 is when it's going to be. I looked it up while I'm sitting here talking. CFP, so you can go to bsides.barcelona. Wow. Okay. So it's HTTPS bsides.barcelona. So they've paid for a special custom domain. So you can go check that out. And you know what? I'll add it to the show notes this week as well. So part 2 is going to continue. We're going to start out by asking Aaron about physical hardening requirements. I did a little research about this and found that it is possible to burn the tops off of chips and with a microscope or something, read the public key on something. So, that's the question I asked him. I was like, is it physical hardening? Should be more than just, making sure there's tamper-resistant tape or something. Should there be additional controls in place for making sure that keys or something are not easily readable off of the devices? So that was it. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. So for full disclosure, I did do quite a bit of research on the IoT. There are devices and then there are platforms. So in one of my researchings, I found that Microsoft has an ecosystem called Sphere, for instance, and then you can take the Sphere OS or whatever it is and put that on embedded devices. What I thought of physical hardening was like, tamper resistance or something, because, if private keys or, if something that is an identifier for that device is embedded in a chip somewhere, with poor tamper resistance on a device, you could, with the right tools, if you didn't want to, show that it's, this Alexa had been tampered with, for instance, you could, possibly burn the tops of the chips off and gain access to the keys or something. I was thinking of physical hardening from that point of view, where it's like, maybe the physical keys are not available, or there's additional protections in place to keep the devices from being broken into easily. But I guess I was wrong on that in that respect.
Not necessarily. That's definitely an area that is of importance, and especially when there isn't any type of monitoring from the physical point of view. Right. But obviously, maybe not obviously, depending on the particular IoT device and the sensitivity of the device. If it's industrial, or if it's something that is deployed in, let's say, a kind of highly sensitive, let's say, government area, that it has to abide by certain regulation. They'll more than likely have some sort of, fuses or tamper resistance, or let's say some, zeroing out, or a fuse that sends off a message over to an admin, for example. Okay. So certainly important, but also, the idea of the physical hardening, let's say, for example, and this is something that we come across, and, our team, my team as well, just my day job, for example, automotive devices. You don't even have to necessarily, connect to a UART or a JTAG, those kind of hardware interfaces, debugging interfaces. Let's say it has a mother and daughter board. And all you really need to do is sniff between the mother and daughter board, basically figure out what type of serial connection it's talking on, whatever the baud rate is, whatever it is. If anything leaks in clear text, for example, a password to the OTA, server, and you get access to the firmware, and you get access to server side, which is always the goal, right? As a pen tester, and this is, it's something that I do regularly as a pen tester. You want to compromise the local device, but at the end of the day, higher impact is server side, and something that'll affect the company wide and also product wide.
Right. Yeah. When I was thinking of physical hardening, it took me back to my days when I used to use a Dell desktop. And it was Dell. This is the one I remember, but there were other CPU manufacturers that, if you cracked open the case and either put RAM in or something, it would tell you, hey, the number, the amount of RAM you've had has changed. Either it's went up or down, or there's a switch that you actually had to know the BIOS password to go in and clear out the error, or it would give you a post beep and then say, oh, this has been opened, that kind of thing, to show that kind of hardening. I assume with some IoT devices, depending on what kind of device it is, a fuse would get blown, like you said, that would let the device know that it had possibly been tampered with, or it might cause different working in the on the device, or let somebody know through a UI that this has been opened in this case.
Yes.
Right.
Some sort of action, whether that's auditing or a proactive action.
Right.
And what number 10 is supposed to represent is kind of all of the above. So again, going back to kind of just the overall theme, we talk about, unified list, but also simplicity. Right. Simplicity between all those industries. And it's a difficult task to kind of tackle, with all the different types of audiences. But again, what it's supposed to entail is, there's also the tampering proof or tamper-proof protections, or debugging interfaces that are exposed, or anything that, let's say, like, even if the debug interfaces are secure, but like I mentioned, the kind of daughter board, motherboard situation where there is something that leaks by accident, that could totally circumvent all the controls, or compromise the whole confidentiality of the ecosystem, is what we're trying to aim at for a remote attack. Right. It could be a remote attack, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. The idea is to take control of the device via some means or physical means.
Cool.
So I have a question on number 6. insufficient privacy protection. So that's fine. The ecosystem that is stored insecurely, improperly, or without permission. So without permission, how is a developer or creator of a device to know that the data on the device, while it may be stored securely, encrypted, whatever, would be used without permission?
Yeah, so developers, a little background about me. So I previously worked at Belkin and Linksys, which is how I kind of got involved in kind of the whole IoT game. And from working with them, developers don't know. It's not the developer's responsibility to know. What it comes down to is the security and legal team working together to ensure that the users, for example, are aware how your data is being used, B, how long your data is retained, C, how it is secured, and whether that is true or not is a different story, right? But developers, developers are really, they're supposed to know how their data is being used in the platforms they store their data within, whether that's a mobile device, whether that's an embedded device, whether that is through an appliance, some sort of web UI, or through the browser. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But in light of number 6, the idea is to ensure that you are properly making the user aware. And this is becoming more of an issue, or will become more of an issue, when you have things like GDPR. Moving forward, again, we talked about more of kind of privacy acts that are being passed. I mentioned, California has 2 of them, one for IoT specific and one for general consumers. It's very high level in the sense of the description. But as far as drilling down into the specific details and whether you put that on a developer, I doubt that would be the responsibility of a developer. It's usually up to legal and the kind of leads for that specific product to ensure that it is incorporated correctly and abides by whatever framework that the device is being used for, whether it's for children, whether it's for general consumers, whether it's for automotive, et cetera.
Yep. Right. And the developer or the creator of an embedded device, an IoT device, may not know what happens to that data once it goes into the cloud. A lot of these IoT devices send data across the internet. While it may be sent securely, they've got no control over what the company may or may not do with that data once it goes into some data center somewhere that it's like a black box to them, right?
Yep.
Yeah, always. Almost always. Developers, for the most part, is aware of what they code and develop and what they test, but everything outside of their particular feature, their particular responsibility, it's not in the area of expertise. You'll have a team that's responsible for the on-device firmware, that's developing the firmware. You have another team that's developing Android and iOS app, and even within iOS and Android apps, you have teams that are divvied up between the startup of the app and discovery, and then from there the secure pairing and provisioning into a network, and then from there decommissioning. Then some of those are outsourced, which goes down to kind of the supply chain of any types of embedded device or IoT device. But that's kind of a tangent, different subject. But at the end of the day, there's always several different perspectives, different backgrounds, different responsibilities between team members. But security is the responsibility of everyone. Unfortunately, we're not there as an industry to kind of place that on developers solely. That's the majority, especially embedded developers, have not had any secure coding training, guidance, and especially something that's tailored towards embedded devices. Usually everything's, created or developed towards web, and you have frameworks and things like that. So it's much different game when you're talking to kind of an embedded developer. But, again, there's a lot of different areas in IoT where privacy can play a part into the ecosystem and the security of the ecosystem. But again, I'll kind of fall back to the legal counsel, unfortunately, because developers aren't majority of developers aren't qualified to make those types of decisions for organizations. Although they should be aware of how the data is stored, processed, decrypted, et cetera. Although that's not always the case. Some of them may be only responsible for encrypting a certain way, and whether it's a PKI system, whatever it may be.
So what recourse does a developer have? I mean, do you foresee a developer knowing about this list, building an IoT device and saying, hey, we fail on half of these things or more, right? What do they, I don't know. I guess this question isn't for you, but do you see that developers can use this as a tool to help their organization create?
As far as the top 10 directly, perhaps not, but there are general principles that developers can follow. One general principle, and it's going to sound obvious, but privacy by design. And the Federal Trade Commission has released several documents on how to properly anonymize data, how to properly acquire data that is necessary only for device usage. And also, I'll put a shameless plug in there. We have some guidance within the Embedded Application Security Project, general guidance, but that developers can reference, or at least principles they can reference, when developing, software for IoT devices.
So, do you see that following best security practices like this practically is better for a company than just putting stuff out there that's insecure, making their bank, and I don't know, just saying no, we don't make that anymore. Sorry, we're on version 2. We don't support that. So if you want a secure device, you'll have to buy a different one. I mean, do you see success stories, or is it just the business making the choice of either doing it securely and taking the risk of spending too much money on security while making a more secure device, or spending almost nothing on security and potentially coming out more ahead monetarily?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as everything, it depends, right? It depends on the maturity of the company. It depends if it's an innovative company, some, Silicon Valley type of company that's, pushing something to market. That is, the idea of pushing their idea or their product into production, and then later worry about security is something that's common. Prototyping that turns into production. But I would say, or I'll start with saying that we've come a long way, especially since the 2014 version, or even in 2014, 2013. And I don't know if it's indirectly because of the kind of the media, the breaches, the board of directors who are now been personally involved, Equifax, or any of these major breaches that affect everyone, these, the SPG, Marriott, whatever it is, and these are the people who we're being engaged with from the consultancy standpoint, from a third party standpoint. They're being more involved, and they're starting to question the due diligence of their own internal teams,
almost the morals.
And yeah, it is.
Decisions.
And these are public. Some of these companies are publicly traded. And it's the board of directors who are doing the due diligence and ensuring by engaging in a third party, either by their inside counsel or a third-party counsel, to get involved with a consultancy that will help them with ensuring that the company is doing what they should, that they're performing pen tests, or they're performing automated scans for static code analysis or dynamic scans or whatever it is. Whatever it is that they say they're doing, because board of directors are taking the management for the management words as something that is truth. But what we're seeing is more and more kind of the major decision makers are more involved in due diligence process, and then again, whether that is something that is a new product or even through mergers and acquisitions, where they're acquiring a manufacturing company and they want to ensure this company is doing X, Y, Z that they're saying they're doing. So there's some different perspectives there. But again, I'll go back to saying that we're definitely in a better place. We're going on the right foot. It's still not great, right? And it's hard. Some of these devices, A, can never be updated. B, can never, be decommissioned.
Right.
So there's some complexities, and again, depending on how the device is used and deployed. But we're yet to see the real impact. But yeah, so I'm not sure if I answered your question. I know I kind of went through a tangent in a way, but feel free to ask me whatever you want.
Yeah. So I found a story on computerweekly.com. It's the first link there in the show notes, back in June 27th of 2018, and there they said that a global IoT security standard remains elusive, and one of the the points raised by this Olaf Kolkman, I apologize if I pronounced Olaf wrong. He said, connected device like a smoke detector, it has different security properties than that of a medical device, for instance. So, do you worry that perhaps the IoT top 10 paints too broad a stroke? Whereas, car IoT devices or medical device IoT devices that try to use this top 10, some of it may not be applicable, or, maybe it doesn't go far enough. For instance, embedded devices use, some of them have a kernel, some of them don't. Some of the code inside of it is not using ASLR or DEP, for instance, for memory protections, allowing for corruption. So the web UI would possibly have the ability to take over the device. If it doesn't have a kernel, then it's just a flat bin file. Those bin files can be modified on the website, allowing for what looks like a secure update mechanism, but isn't. Do you worry that these kinds of things that aren't, well, I would say they're not covered in your IoT, but they're they may be too specific for certain environments, and therefore not be like number 10 or 11, be like number 11 or 12 on the top 10 list here, and just didn't make it on the list. So this goes to one of the questions in my list here. Were there anything that didn't make the list, or is something that should have been on the list, maybe you thought should have been on the list but didn't exactly make it because of other reasons?
Yeah, so I'll answer your first question first in regards to like industrial, medical, or automotive.
Right.
We have plans this year to work towards more specific guidance for those specific industries.
Cool.
We do believe that this top 10 list does or is applicable to those areas, medical, industrial, automotive, and even if you look at the research last year with automotive, whether BMW, Mazda, whoever it is, hard-coded passwords were one of the ways they got in,
right.
for example. And on to your second question, as far as what didn't make the list. So we included the kind of web, the mobile, API, hardware. And one thing that may stand out as something that's missing is wireless. So wireless didn't necessarily make the cut this time. whether that's secure wireless configuration, secure wireless provisioning, secure, the auto kind of pairing, whatever it may be. It was definitely one of the items that folks asked about and brought up, and it was in our list in the beginning. Although we feel right now it's not it's a risk. It's definitely a big issue, and definitely going to be incorporated in the future. But this release, we didn't incorporate wireless or any type of wireless related items. So there's also another item that may not have made the list or anything specific. And again, this top 10 is a very, simplified list. But we didn't include anything in regards to safety, safety reliability.
Right.
That some other publications did include. Also maybe, kind of for more specific vulnerabilities, risks, issues, were not explicitly called out, although they can be included in, items like 2, 3, you know what I mean? There's some overlap between 2, 3, 7, 8, you know what I mean? Anything firmware, anything that controls the device.
Right.
But nothing that was explicitly said in this release.
Okay.
You mentioned that
I would say those 3.
You mentioned that there's a lot of good things coming from OWASP earlier on. Can you kind of give us some hints? Yeah.
So first, to make the list more applicable, practical, we have a mapping project that we're working on right now. Hopefully within the first quarter of 2019, we can help push that out. And what that mapping project will do is map towards a number of different industry publications. Some of them are the sister projects that we named. The NISA IoT baseline, the NIST publication, the CSA IoT controls matrix, and so forth. There's a lot out there. The idea is to map as many of the top 10 items to those recommendations, those guidance tasks, security controls as possible. And in parallel, we have some other efforts going on in regards to, let's say, requirements. Have you heard of, something called the Application Security Verification Standard. This is something that's used by OWASP for web. What we're trying to do, and also mobile, they have a mobile application security verification standard, something that can be used for requirements, but also for testing. And there's 3 different levels depending on the context of the, let's say for the mobile web, for the application. In our case, for the IoT, it'll be the IoT device. And it could include anything from authentication to encryption to wireless to hardware and so forth. So we're working on an IoT ASVS.
Cool.
And along with the automotive and ICS, we have some folks who are very, very motivated and in this specific field that we're looking to publish something later on this year specific to ICS and automotive. And again, that's something that I'm involved in and driving for our project. So those are just a few things. There are definitely some more. We talked about collaborating with other groups out there, whether that is directly working together and having meetings. We have meetings every other Friday, and having joint meetings with them, or even including them in peer reviews, ensuring they're involved and they're aware of the work that we're doing and performing.
Cool. So one of the other questions I have is, a lot of times the OWASP top 10 is geared for security professionals, not necessarily for developers. So we have to find an analog. So it's like you tell a developer, you've got cross-site scripting on your site. Okay, what does that mean for me? And you tell them, well, you're not sanitizing your inputs. Okay, that's better. What do we, are there analogs anywhere where we can, when we go tell a developer, hey, new IoT device, it looks cool, but you're using insecure ecosystem interfaces, and they're going to look at you and they're like, okay, well, what does that mean? So you just, is there a list of something somewhere where we can go, okay, yeah, you're using, Telnet, for instance, or you're using, broken, HTTP connection, to serve, sensitive information, or, you've got Telnet running on this box, or, you left a password in from, XYZ and it's right here in the code. Is there any analog where we can speak to developers or use examples for developers to, that they would better understand than some of the headings that we've got here? Because in a report, that's going to be confusing for developers. I mean, or require us to go through and explain more fully.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about OWASP is that we do have that knowledge and the releases to suggest or to guide developers on how to better, develop and code and use their frameworks, mobile, web. Although for our IoT project, what we're doing is we're also working on, working on a lot of things. And again, for the kind of the top 10, we had about maybe 10 to 13 folks who were involved from February 2018. And others who are also within the OWASP Slack team, and then there's an IoT security channel in there who are responsive. But what we're trying to do is also add some use and abuse cases with some examples.
Great.
With this, kind of the idea of solidifying each concept. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we did last time around. But again, what we want to do is make this list simple. When you keep drilling down and drilling, it gets more complicated, more complex, more difficult, and it's not contextual to the audience that is digesting the document. And right. I go back to embedded developers. Mobile and web, would mean nothing to them. They're like, oh, I have no idea what that means. I don't even care.
Right.
That doesn't apply to me.
Right. Yeah.
But that's something that my project, Embedded Application Security Project, tries to do is kind of fill in those gaps.
Cool. Yeah. Because, some of these things, especially like privacy concerns, developer may, think it's okay to send that telemetry back to the company. But, what the legal people don't necessarily know yet is that, collecting that data may be illegal, or, securing that data in the background in your ecosystem needs to be, done a certain way. So, or, there needs to be options depending on, where they're living in the world, to opt out of those things. So, they may collect that data, but they're also going to have to go back and possibly add functionality so that you can opt out of that. Having those things or being knowledgeable about, privacy concerns, or what web interfaces are the most secure, or what hashing algorithms are for passwords, for instance. Knowing those is important for developers. So having that checklist when you're in an IoT environment is important. So
it's even further than developers, because let's say the developer does what they think is correct, mm-hmm. And they use the necessary hashing functionality, whatever. But let's say the system network guys or the DevOps guys decide to redirect a US or a UK customer over to the US, for example. You know what I mean? Yep. And all of a sudden you have cross-pollination between data, and becomes a whole big problem there.
Yeah.
Safe Harbor, GDPR, all these other regulations.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's there. We're hearing horror stories all the time of nanny cams being hacked by people, or there was one guy I heard he he was hacking them, but then telling people over the audio connection how to secure the IoT stuff, which is great from a security point of view, but it's still somewhat illegal to hack the device and then be, even though you're trying to tell the person how to be more secure. So
it's a creepy labor of love.
Yeah, it's layer creepy on the OSI model or whatever. So yeah,
definitely.
Right.
I have some of those cameras, by the way, and I use those for an IoT village that I host on some of the local conferences, AppSec California, and some other ones in LA, in the LA area. So we have a few of those there, and then we can also demonstrate how to use that functionality.
Goodness.
Kind of base camera.
Wow. Okay. Mr. Betcher, do you have any other questions for Aaron?
Nope.
Cool. Well, Mr. Guzman, I thank you for coming on the show. Maybe you could tell people about where you are you going to be speaking anywhere on IoT in the near future, or is there anything that you are working on? I mean, other than from the OWASP point of view, that might be interesting for people.
Yeah, no talks planned as of yet. I have a few going through CSP right now. Conference season's just around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'll be at AppSec California. I'm a co-organizer there. ISSA LA. I'll be running IoT villages and also local conferences. ShellCon, which is the B-sides of Los Angeles, but it's renamed ShellCon. I'm on Twitter at scripting XSS, like scripting cross-site scripting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about it. Feel free to ping me. Always online if you guys are on the OWASP Slack or anything, Twitter, feel free.
Cool.
Always willing to help out, share knowledge.
Right on. So yeah, speaking of helping out, what if people were like, hey, I know a little bit about, hacking embedded systems or whatever. I would like to help out with the OWASP initiatives. Is there a process or anything to get involved in some of these working groups?
It's all volunteer driven, and it's all dependent on, the individual. If they're willing to drive their initiative, we'll help drive their idea and help coordinate the project and help curate volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, if you want to get involved, hit up me, Daniel, Craig, go on to our OWASP project page. We have a link to get added to the OWASP Slack. Come on to the IoT security channel. Ping us, and whatever your idea is, if you have an outline, if you have, a way that it can help others, if we think that, let's say there are other examples out there that we can make better. For example, if there's an IoT GOAT, for example, that's like a vulnerable IoT device product,
Nice.
is also another project we're working on.
Okay.
Like WebGoat.
Cool.
Definitely willing to, help make that a sub project and put that individual as a project lead for that project. And again, we'll help curate and connect the folks to the right people within OWASP, within the industry, to make that project successful.
Very nice. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Betcher, what are you doing right now with LogMD and how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to discuss LogMD or any of the initiatives you're working on right now, sir?
They can check out the website log-md.com and find out more about that. We're going to be releasing another version pretty soon, so just trying to avoid some more scope creep and getting that out.
Cool.
And got some new interesting things to add, and looking forward to moving on to other bigger things.
Yeah, I keep forgetting your
product.
filthy developer and stuff now too. So yeah, you've been doing that for almost 2 years now, right?
Pretty much.
Yep. And for those of the new listeners, what is LogMD?
LogMD is a log and malicious discovery tool for Windows.
Cool.
So it's a standalone executable that you can run and harvest the correct data, and also it will help you set things on your Windows systems to be able to catch these attacks when they happen in the logs.
Nice.
And other places.
Nice.
So, yep, it acts as a guide to help you become more secure in Windows.
Okay. And you are, what are you on Twitter?
At Betcherpwned. BOETTCHERPWNED.
Right on. So Ms. Berlin, of course, was greatly missed. We actually waited as long as we could, but she was driving through the blizzard, so I hope she made it home safely. You can find her on Twitter at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR. Her latest endeavor of mental health hackers is on Twitter as well. Great. I shouldn't have brought that up because I can't remember what the name of the Twitter handle is. Let me see. Mental health hackers. Anyway, so you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Brakesec, BRAKE, You can follow myself on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. Mental Health Hackers is at Hackers Health. She's got a lot of things going on. She's available for conferences to run, mental health hacker villages, or speaking as well. She does have a PayPal if you want to be a supporter of that, or you can volunteer at mentalhealthhackers.org for villages and stuff, or sponsors at mentalhealthhackers.org as well. We have a Brakesec Slack. It's quite active. We've got some moderators. We have a code of conduct or a social contract, if you will. We have a resume review with David Sybuck and a bunch of other folks on there. Scott Pack and Megan Roddy Piper, is on there as moderators. We have a lot of channels, sim channels, very active. We have career advice where the resume reviews are. We also have a CTF club, which I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. I would love to say that it's going well, but I don't know if it's falling below my, what I'm thinking it should be, which is a bunch of people get on and we're all hacking on vulnerable VMs, and it's not exactly working out as I thought it would. But, we have a CTF club. We have IPPSec in there. He's one of the moderators of Hack the Box, so you can get on and, we have a lab that you can join, hackthebox.eu, and get into our private lab where we have a couple of VMs that are running, and you can hack on those. A lot of stuff going on in the Slack. Mr. Betcher's on there.
Leadership.
Yeah, we have a leadership channel. We have, we have a high IoT and device area, programming. So if you have questions about code, we have a threat hunting channel. So if you've noticed something weird, you can ask other people in that channel. Hey, I noticed this IP address. Has anybody else seen anything like that? Kind of like an ISAC, but not as rigorously maintained. So if you're interested in getting onto that, you can send us a DM on Brakesec on our Twitter handle, or you can email bds.podcast@gmail.com. And, we have 400, 500 active users on a regular basis. So, there's no shortage of what's going on over there right now. I turn it on, but people already complain that there's too many Slack notifications when we're doing the podcast. So I've got it turned off right now. But we have a Brakesec store. You can go and get a t-shirt, and, that gives us a little money. We have a Patreon. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. That goes to things like, web hosting, goes to pay for our Zooms that we use for, CTF club and other meetups. We have our, when we have our sim club or our book club that's going on. I failed to mention those, but those are really awesome. Scott and runs the sim club, and Dave runs the book club, which we're still going through. I think the hacker playbook version 3, I think. And we do book clubs and stuff all the time, every other week, so that runs on a regular basis. So feel free to join us. Feel free to listen to some of the back episodes. You'll find out everything that I'm probably forgot on this. But Mr. Betcher, did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio app. You can find us on all of those things. So tell your friends, word of mouth advertising is better than gold for us. So Mr. Guzman, thank you for joining us. We'd love to have you come back and talk about the embedded security stuff. I think that would be very interesting and very different because while, like you said, it does overlap a little bit, there's some huge differences. Like, embedded security is in, critical infrastructure, not just inside your Alexa or your your Google Assistants or the Google Home Hubs or your Nests or whatever. So I think those would be some fairly interesting use cases or discussions on security for embedded devices. So if you get some time, please come back and visit us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Or thanks, Brian.
Brian's, yeah.
Really appreciate it, guys.
Cool.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Right on. All right. So that was it for the first episode of the 2019 season of Breaking Down Security. Have a great week. Be nice to one another. Take care of yourself because, as I'm fond of saying, you're the only one you have. And we will talk to you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.